In 1978, deep within the misty valleys of Wales, two identical twins began speaking a language no one taught them, no one on earth, anyway. They shared thoughts, they moved in perfect sync, and then they vanished. No trace, no goodbye, only the sound of whispers left behind. But the story doesn't end there, Beck, 'cause every 7 years, they return. This isn't just a tale of missing children. This is a tale of something much older, darker, and buried beneath our world. You've never heard a story like this before, in the dim gray folds of Western Wales, tucked beyond the slate rooftops and crooked lanes of Cwmceirw village that by 1978 had already begun to lose itself to time. There lived two girls whose presence would go on to ripple across decades like a whispered curse passed down in gasps and silence. The Moryn twins, Elira and Efa, born under the chill of a November storm that rattled the chapel windows and left the midwife, she and Rydurch, muttering prayers she hadn't used since her own mother's death. They were identical in every weird curls, moon-pale skin, ice-green eyes that seemed too sharp for their age, as if they had already seen through lifetime's sand. Yet, from their earliest days, what frightened the villagers wasn't their matching appearance, but the way they'd sit in absolute silence in the garden of their family's sagging farmhouse, sometimes for hours, heads tilted in perfect symmetry, murmuring in a strange, sharp, lilting language no one recognized, not even their parents, who tried to brush it off as childish gibberish until it persisted into their 6th, 7th, and 8th years, growing more complex, more rapid, more rugen. They called it fruity eighth in their journals, meaning the communion. But when the village priest tried to press them on it during Sunday catechism, they only stared back in unison and said, in perfect English, "You wouldn't understand your two alone," before giggling with uncanny harmony and drifting back into that eerie, musical tongue that no one could place, not Latin, not Welsh, not even close to anything catalogued in the ancient tomes in the county archives. And though the villagers had grown used to hauntings, old ghosts, and stories of the fae, there was something about the twins that made even the old ones stay inside past dusk. Their presence warped things. Clocks stopped, dogs refused to go near them, and once, when a teacher at their school confiscated a strange, runa-covered notebook filled with diagrams of constellations and strange eyes drawn in spirals, she was found the next morning in her home, dazed and whispering something about the red door beneath the school. Though there was never any basement discovered there, despite searches, and, as they aged, the twins only grew stranger, now writing backwards in that same language, etching symbols into their bedroom walls, speaking only to each other and a series of crude rag dolls. They'd named the remembered, claiming they were older than the hills and smarter than the men who buried the stars. By the time they were 10, they'd stopped speaking English altogether, and the isolation that once belonged to them spread to their parents, who grew pale, distant, afraid to even touch their own children. Ella and Efa, however, flourished, at least on the surface, and were often seen wandering the hills alone, barefoot in the frost, whispering to the wind, or leaving cryptic offerings, animal bones arranged in sacred geometry, shards of colored glass, feathers dipped in ashen. The steps of the now abandoned St. Idlo's chapel, which the village had boarded up after a series of bizarre noise, whispers, crying, a woman screaming in a language no one could place, pagan, emanating from beneath its altar. One night in midsummer, under a swollen, blood-red moon, they simply vanished, left their beds, their dolls, even the door unlocked, but no trace was ever found. No footprints, no signs of struggle, only the faint scent of burnt lavender and an inverted cross etched into their window glass, not drawn or painted, but somehow burned into it, like acid had been used. Then the dreams started. Villagers, particularly the older ones, and children, began waking in the dead of night, sobbing or screaming, describing visions of the twins, standing at the foot of their beds, whispering in that same unplaceable tongue, or being pulled by thin, cold hands into tunnels beneath the ground lined with bones and flickering lights, where things with eyes like burning silver watched from cracks in the stone. A year later, a hiker found a cave in the nearby hills, hidden beneath collapsed rocks, with walls covered in the twins' handwriting, more of that strange language. When authorities returned, the cave was gone, sealed by earth as if it had never been disturbed, and the hiker himself disappeared days later. Last seen staring at a lake's reflection, as if waiting for something to emerge. Investigators came and went. Journalists poked around with cameras and microphones, but none stayed long. Some fell ill, some claimed to hear singing at night, and a few simply broke down in tears without understanding why, and the case quietly faded into obscurity, locked in cold archives, whispered about in pubs by old men with failing memories and wives who still won't sleep near mirrors. But the story didn't end there, because every 7 years, almost to the day, 2 red-haired girls are spotted walking along the tree line near Cwmceirw, holding hands and humming in perfect harmonia tune no one can recognize but all swear they've heard in their dreams, though when anyone approaches, they vanish in a blink, leaving behind only 2 tiny footprints in the mud and the faint echo of laughter like wind chimes in a crypt. And though modern skeptics dismiss it all as folklore or hallucination, those who lived through the late 1970s in that haunted Welsh village know better, especially the children who grew up with them, no elderly themselves, but still unwilling to speak their names aloud, let alone go near the place where the Moryn twins once lived, where their bedroom still sits untouched, sealed by rusted nails and salt lines by their long-dead parents who swore on their graves that they weren't ours. Not really, not after the black sky took hold, and where, on certain nights, if you press your ear to the wood, you can still hear the faint rustle of pages turning and a soft, inhuman chant that loops in perfect sync with the heartbeat of the house. Yeah, house that, some say, breathes. Some say the twins were just victims of mental illness. Others believe it was a language disorder. But those who know, those who lived in that valley, will tell you it wasn't sickness. It was something else, something ancient that borrowed the mouths of 2 little girls to speak again. And maybe, just maybe, they're still speaking, not from the shadows, but from beneath. If you ever hear humming at your window on a cold night, don't look, because the Moryn twins might not be done choosing who listens. And next time, it could be you. If you felt a chill while listening, that wasn't just the story. Some truths leave a mark. If you want more tales that whisper from the dark, tap that like button, it feeds the shadows. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might already be watching you.